This is our community's house. We are all guests in it here to serve our community. My name is Mike Little, Mayor for the District of North Vancouver, and so the pleasure falls to me to welcome you all here to our regular meeting of Council for Monday, June 13th at 7 o'clock. This meeting is being held as a hybrid meeting. That means members of Council, the public, and staff can be participating in this meeting both in person or virtually through the Zoom service and the links provided on the district website. We did have some technical matters earlier in the day with our website, but it does appear that it is fully up and operational now, and people can access the meeting through the links provided in that space as well. We've also sent the links around directly into Zoom through our social media, so it is available as an option for people in that regard. At this point, Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions from the agenda as presented? Hearing none, will somebody please move adoption of the agenda? I see Councillor Back moving. Is there a seconder on the matter? Seconded by Councillor Hanson. I'll call the question. All those in favor, contrary minded, motion carries. Thank you very much. In that package, there is one set of meeting minutes from the May 31st public hearing. Are there any errors or omissions from the minutes as presented? Hearing none, will somebody please move adoption of the minutes from the public hearing? Thank you. Councillor Hanson, second by Councillor Back. Call a question on the motion. All those in favor, contrary minded, motion carries and the minutes are adopted. We have no delegations, recognitions at the front end of the meeting tonight, so I'm going to go straight into public input. The Council preserves a period of time of up to 30 minutes at the front end of each regular meeting of Council for members of the community to provide their thoughts and concerns with us. We have a speakers list that has been prepared to that effect. And at this point, I only have one speaker on the list. And that is Peter Teven. Mr. Teven, you believe you're joining us virtually tonight? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I assume you can hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the Council.
Thank you. I'd like to share my screen, if you please. Just going to start that now. Thank you, Your Worship and Council. What I would like to speak to you tonight about is where I see the targeted OCP review and the current project of single-family infill options intersecting. And just before I go past my title page, I think I could not ever look Gillian Constant in the eye if I didn't point out the graphic here that shows that back at the time of the OCP, Lynn Valley was in desperate need of a youth center. And that is still looked for. Just a little bit of timeline review. We started our official community plan process in June 2009. We passed it in June 2011. There was an election, as you all know, in October 2018, another one to come in October 2022. And we started the targeted OCP review in 2019, and it was endorsed by all of you meaning collectively. I'm not sure if anybody voted against it or not, in July of 2021. Now, when I had thought about my comments for tonight, what I initially started out and my response to the survey that I filled out was quite alarming and a little bit angry, because I felt like the survey had nothing to do with what Council was presented during the targeted OCP review and early on in the materials. But when I went and looked back and checked, there was little hints about what it would be about. And but I'm concerned that I think that items that are currently being discussed in the infill options outreach are against our OCP. The reason I say that is this. In our OCP, there's foundational policies. And number 5, respect residential neighborhood character and limit growth in these areas. And then another area where it talks about small lot infill that respects and enhance neighborhood character. But here are the aspects that I feel contravene our OCP. First of all, in the sorry, my screen's getting blocked by the meeting. In April 20th, in the staff report prepared for tonight, it talks about approximately 55% of the district's land area are single-family zoning enabling more housing options. And from the March 30th report, here it talked about new opportunities may also be possible, such as allowing multiple accessory units on a lot, which could increase rental and home ownership options. Now, the reason I light up on this is because, first of all, when we, the public, hear multiple, like accessory unit, we're thinking garage or shed. We're not thinking dwelling unit. So that was a little bit of a kind of a disguise from our point of view of being just private citizens. And clearly from this, talking about increasing both rental and home ownership options, what is being talked about here is stratifying those multiple accessory units. And I submit to you that this is 100% against the very idea of single family zoning. And
if you could draw to a close, Mr. Teven, we're past your time.
Oh boy. Okay, I'm not sure when the clock started, but I'll do my best to wind up really quickly. So I'm also worried that the designation on this is just consult, where consult in the spectrum doesn't really have any accountability to the people who are doing the input. It's just, well, we'll tell you whether we listened. And I'm also concerned about the nature of the rhetoric that has been talked about, which, you know, I've certainly spoken to one council member before who didn't equate, but certainly alluded to the fact that single-family zoning had roots in both colonialism and racism. I would rather see this being much more open.
Are you able to draw to a close?
Yes, this is my final screen. I have these cases, these questions. Will this be on a case-by-case basis or carte blanche?
Sorry, Mr. Teven. So those questions, we can see them, you can send them, and we'll make sure that they get circulated to the council and to staff as well. But we're over 5 minutes.
I will do that. Suffice to say, I'm very, very concerned.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. And so would anybody else like to speak in the public input period this evening? I believe I have some virtual participants that have raised their virtual hands here. So I have Corey Cost. Corey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I just have to enable the video so you can see me and possibly just see a very simple screen sharing process where I think this is a relevant thing. It's a very short comment. I hope, Your Worship, that you can see what I'm.
Yes, I can see the security alarm page there. Yeah,
and very simple points. You know, I always believe that local government should be as kind as possible to its citizens to accomplish the behavior that you're looking for, and don't you use a little incentive, use a little common sense. So my suggestion is that the second accidental false alarm on any calendar year have a fine of just $50. The first one would be waived in the calendar year instead of the 150, and the rest could stay the same as staff suggested. So I'm just trying to be a little more compassionate here. Let's not lower the full handler down to $150 the first time you go over this forgiveness thing. And consider also reimbursing the owner, let's say by whatever percentage, but 80% of the fine or the costs incurred for the repair, whichever is lower, if appropriate receipts can be shown that remedial action has actually taken place. Let's work together as a community with our local governments. That's essentially what I'm saying. Thank you very much, Your Worship, for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much for your comments, Corey Cost. I believe we have another virtual participant wishing to speak, or I actually don't see another virtual hand at this point. Okay, Hazen Colbert, can you hear me? I see you're muted, Hazen Colbert. I understand you wanted to speak.
I
There we go.
Have I unmuted? I have multiple screens here in front of me.
Oh, there we go.
Council, I speak tonight to recommended changes in Lynn Valley Town Centre as a result of the new 4,400 people that have moved here in the past 6 years. It's easy to do the math. We have 20 new buildings with an average of 100 units each, with 2.2 people per unit. That works out to 4,400. We'll add another 200 people in August at the Kiwanis campus. That will push us up to 4,600, and 300 new residents are coming in January at Parkside at Lynn. East 27th between Lynn Valley Road and Mountain Highway now has as many distractions as found in Edgemont Village. I recommend the speed limit be dropped from 50 kilometers an hour to 30 kilometers an hour. At least 100 new dogs are living in the town center, many in condo buildings with little to no green space. Owners take their dogs to Kirkstone Park for exercise. However, there is no off-leash space. I propose to bifurcate Kirkstone Park. The southern half would remain dog on leash only and would include the sports fields, the skateboard park, and the lacrosse box. The northern half of Kirkstone Park would be renamed Lynn Woods, similar to Mapleview Forest, Cove Forest, and Mountain Forest, with dogs being allowed off leash. There are precedents in the DND for this type of sharing, and I can submit them to council if required. I note there is only one doggy bag dispenser in Kirkstone Park. It was refilled in December 2021, then again in March 2022, and not since. Every attempt by park users, including attempts by, believe it or not, your own staff in DND Parks, working at Crown Street, whom I have talked directly with to get this dispenser refilled, has fallen on deaf ears. I recommend 2 dispensers and that they be refilled every 2 weeks. I trust these requests are not a hardship on the District of North Vancouver. I would also make one other observation tonight, Council, that any person on this council no longer living in the District of North Vancouver recuse themselves from voting on any development applications for the remainder of this term in council. In closing, I would like to say that Mr. Teven's presentation is due a great deal of discussion and discourse and debate. Mr. Teven and I will actually disagree about certain aspects of what he is proposing, but it requires debate. It absolutely requires debate, and I truly hope that as going into the municipal election, the matter of infill and how it is defined is actually part of the election campaign. Council and staff and everybody else that's listening to me, I thank you for your time tonight, and I yield to the chair, Mayor Little.
Thank you very much for your comments, Hazen Colbert. Okay, we still have some time left. Would anybody else like to address the council? I have Juan Palacio here in the council chamber. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you, Mayor Little and members of the council. I just wanted to say that I noticed that there, in the agenda, there is the mention of supporting public electric vehicle charging stations, and I wanted to say that I strongly support this, and I believe we should put as many as possible everywhere, because one key reason that people do not get electric cars is because of the lack of charging stations and because they feel that they need to charge at home. And yeah, you guys have heard this, and I believe that is a very serious reason. That is the reason why a friend of mine said that he had the chance to get one and it would have costed the same, and he said no because there wasn't sufficient amount of charging stations, and climate change and all that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I believe that item you're referring to is 8.5. Okay. Would anybody else like to address the council? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move on with the regular agenda at this point. First item up for discussion, council, is item 8.1. This is bylaw 8567, required amendment to general local election bylaw 6876 in 1996. And so this item is up for adoption. There's no debate on adoption. And so will somebody move? Moved by
So moved.
Councillor. Is there a second by Councillor Murray? I'll call the question on the matter. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next item is item 8.2. Bylaw 8568, rezoning for 1970 Spicer Road. This matter is returning from a public hearing, and at this point, I'm looking for a motion from council. Councillor Murray,
So moved.
you're moved by Councillor Murray. Councillor Hanson, you're second on the matter. Okay. Councillor Murray, any comments?
I will be supporting this rezoning, and as much as I sorry, I'm just opening, I lost my agenda, so I'm just opening it up. I'm just, bear with me. It sent me to just a sec.
If you'd like, I can, Councillor Hanson, I could go to Councillor Hanson, then come back to you.
That would be fine. Thank you, Mayor Little.
Okay.
Thanks, sorry
Thank
about
you.
that.
Councillor Hanson, your comments?
Yeah, thanks, Rich. I'm very pleased to support the rezoning of this property from public house commercial zoning to light industrial. I note that this site was zoned light industrial until it was rezoned in 1992 to accommodate a pub and a restaurant. The light industrial zoning is consistent with the zoning in the surrounding properties. The owner is a local business that employs 25 to 30 persons, mostly from the North Shore. The owner wishes to use the property to park trucks and equipment and thereby comply with the requirement to keep such equipment off the roads when parked. The owner has been using a similar lot on Barrow Street for a similar purpose without complaint. There were 91 notices sent out to surrounding property owners. Only one neighboring property voiced an objection, and that person didn't attend at the public hearing. The rezoning will not result in any loss of tax revenue to the district, and in all the circumstances, I'm very pleased to support the rezoning.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Murray?
Yes, thank you. So I will be supporting this rezoning application. And I think Mr. Lenz, the owner of Headwater Management, the applicant in this rezoning, was very correct when he said that the issue for him and his company that encompasses gravel, soil, and trucking is a paramount issue in the District of North Vancouver. We have several companies like Mr. Lenz's, Tupper and Edgewater, and large trucking companies. And I think one of our sustainability directions is to keep companies like that on the North Shore, so they're not driving over the Second Narrows Bridge and having to find land in Surrey, Coquitlam to park their vehicles. They do a tremendous amount of work on the North Shore, and it's these types of businesses that built the North Shore, and it's these types of businesses that we need to accommodate in the North Shore. We are the loss of industrial land, the loss of commercial land is increasing. And, I think at one time we had a plan, and that plan, has not materialized. And we really are going to have to review the lands in Maplewood to be able to see if we can accommodate these kinds of businesses going forward. Those businesses are growing. They're not shrinking, they're getting bigger. And we need to be able to have those services on the North Shore, so we're not contributing to increased greenhouse gas emissions and traffic by having, workers that live here have to drive all the way over the bridge to go to yards, miles away. Certainly the cost of fuel and diesel is contributing to, the challenge for these businesses as well. So I think, the next council will be charged with looking at a very creative and pointed plan in regards to maintaining existing businesses and accommodating their needs. And it's going to be challenging because we are, we have challenges with available land. So we're going to have to look outside the box. for one business to close in order to accommodate another business. Certainly there were challenges over the years for the location of the pub, and COVID certainly didn't help. But I think this use is, you know, as Councillor Hampson points out, it was the original use in the area, and I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Murian. My own comments on the matter. First, I'd like to express my appreciation to Councillor Back for chairing the meeting in my absence. Appreciate the coverage of our acting mayor on that one. I also reviewed both the minutes, the video, and a lot of the correspondence that came in before the time of the public hearing. I do remember the opposition letter that we received, and they seem to be very concerned about the impact of potential truck noise on the property to their property, because they're in the film industry involved with recording audio. You know, I absolutely hear that would be a concern for impacting your business, but I would suggest that the trucks moving on the immediate east side of or west side of the property would present a far greater noise impact on them than the trucks that are parked at this site. So I think it is a fair reuse of the property, and could easily comply with good neighbor expectations on the space. It's a tricky site. It's interesting that, you know, it used to be unthinkable that you would have someone with a commercial zoning effectively what would have been down zoning to light industrial, but light industrial has become so lucrative in the last few years that it really has passed these restricted commercial zonings like C6. And so yeah, I expect we'll probably have to contend with more requests as people recognize the inherent value in light industrial zoning and how flexible it is. But I think that this is a reasonable change for this space. It's in keeping with the character of the community around it, and the loss of the pub, while we certainly want to provide opportunities for people to have a restaurant in and close to their place of work. This one over the years proved to be very difficult to be a viable operation, changing hands several times in the last number of years because it was a challenging venue to capture enough mealtime peaks. So anyway, so I will be supporting and giving second and third reading on this matter. Any other members of council wishing to speak? Okay, I'm prepared to call a question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, council. Okay, moving on to item 8.3. This is the proposed demolition waste reduction bylaw, and I believe we have some comments from staff at the front end here.
Thank you.
I see Carolyn Jackson, and I think Bo Ocampo was the writer for it, but Carolyn Jackson, your comments?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I do have some slides, if that's okay for me to share.
Please do.
You see the slides?
Yes, I can.
So thank you. Yeah, good evening, Your Worship and members of council. I'm pleased to be here today to provide a little bit of background regarding the proposed demolition waste reduction bylaw. I am joined by Bo Ocampo and Brett Dwyer. I just want to acknowledge that Bo did a great deal of work on this file, and unfortunately she's just a little bit under the weather this evening, so I'm going to be presenting on her behalf. So in February 2022, staff received direction from council to begin stakeholder consultation regarding potential regulations to reduce them. Waste from this particular sector is actually the largest category of waste that is currently sent to landfill in our region. It's about 1/3 of all the waste that is disposed of on an annual basis. So the goal of this regulation really is to increase the diversion of demolition waste with the additional benefits of reduced resource consumption and emissions by supporting the shift to a more circular economy. A number of municipalities have implemented recycling regulations for demolition waste, and some municipalities have implemented or are considering what's called a deconstruction requirement or a wood salvage requirement. what we're finding is that current practices for heavy items like concrete, these kinds of materials are already being recycled, and other materials like metals that are really high value are already being recovered just because of their very high value. So this is why in this approach, we're really just focusing on the salvage of the wood. So taking a look at our permits that are issued for demolition of single-family homes each year here in the district, about 100 of these kinds of demolition permits are issued in any given year. And the bylaw before you this evening is targeting the demolition of older homes. Those are homes that are built prior to the year 1950, so right up until 1949. And these older homes contain materials that are easier to separate compared to more modern construction. This slide just shows the difference in the materials from a demolition versus a salvage or a deconstruction. And you can see here that through deconstruction, valuable materials such as old growth timber can be salvaged and reused. You can see the photo at the far right, I believe, is an ice cream shop where they've actually incorporated some of that reclaimed lumber into the finishings there. So the benefits of this approach include, of course, reducing waste, avoiding resource extraction, creating economic opportunities. And then on a site basis, when you're looking at the actual demolition site, through the deconstruction process, it's really, oh, sorry. I just noticed, Your Worship, you have your hand up.
Oh, no, that's for when you're done. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. All right. Yeah, so the other benefits of this process include, just at the site basis, minimizing dust, and of course, a much quieter process for the nearby community. So the rationale for focusing on a wood salvage requirement: wood is a really high value material. It's the largest proportion of construction and demolition waste. And this process of deconstruction or systematic disassembly, it really facilitates the separation of additional materials that can then be recovered. So the salvage requirement that's proposed in our regulation is a 3.5 kilograms or 2.64 feet of reclaimed lumber per square foot of finished floor space. And this target is based on industry best practices and case studies that were reviewed either locally or in the US. So for example, for a typical 2,000 square foot home, that means that about 7 tons of salvage wood would be recovered. The application process includes a 1-page wood salvage estimate, of course, based on the square footage of finished floor area, administration fee, and a $15,000 waste diversion deposit, which is refunded in full if the salvage requirement is met. Our consultation process included targeted outreach by email and phone, along with workshops and a virtual meeting for industry stakeholders. And overall, we heard support. We heard support for increasing the vintage of homes to a larger subset of houses, the positive net, further increased compliance. We heard concern for the number of available service providers, added permit processing times, increased project time and complexity. Overall, we heard general support for the proposed approach and for creating a level playing field for industry. We did have a couple of respondents that noted that they were already voluntarily doing deconstruction and that they supported the general approach that we were taking. So just to conclude, the bylaw, if adopted, would take effect January 2023, so roughly 6 months from now. The bylaw increases the diversion of demolition waste and supports the shift towards a more circular economy. And if adopted, we'll definitely be closely monitoring the results following implementation and reporting back to council on the outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll be moving the staff recommendation. Is there a seconder on the matter? Seconded by Councillor Curran. Just my own comments. I've served on the Metro Vancouver Solid Waste Committee for a long period of time now, and this is one of our biggest issues. We obviously put a lot of energy into single-use reductions and others, but they amount for a relatively small percentage of the waste stream that we have. Construction and demolition waste is over 50% of the waste that comes through our facilities. And hands down, you cannot address your diversion targets without addressing construction and demolition waste. This is an important step, although I think that it's just a start. This is going to probably affect about 20 houses a year at its start, but at the end, we're going to have to tweak those numbers. We're going to have to be more aggressive about supporting a secondary economy for the materials to make sure that they get reused and are consumed in the market as a secondary product. But really, this is the start of us talking about real deconstructibility, making sure that the new houses that we're building are being built of materials that can be adequately deconstructed and avoid the waste stream in their lifetime entirely. Obviously, our goal would be to produce housing that stands for a very long period of time at a very low maintenance cost, but we also have to contemplate that things will change, and therefore the deconstructibility of those buildings is critically important. I think that the administrative fee of $250 is modest compared to the costs that people are going through at the time. I don't want to be adding costs to the production of houses, but I think that this is a reasonable and modest administrative fee, and so long as people are acting in good faith and complying with the intent of the regulation, then I see no reason why they wouldn't be able to limit that to their exposure, limit it to just the administrative fee as their exposure. The $15,000 would be rebated to them upon completion of the necessary documentation. So with that, I'll just say that I think that this is heading in the right direction. I think I see that we're going to have to adjust it from time to time because it's going to have to capture more of our stock, not simply such old stock, but it's a good place to start. So I'll be supportive. I believe the seconder on the matter was Councillor Curran. Do you have any further comments?
Thank you, staff, for putting this together. It's nice to see some of these circular economic policy changes becoming implemented. I will second Mayor Little in that I do have some specific questions around the decision to go with 1950. I do understand that older homes are easier to deconstruct and there's less of a mixed use of materials and spray insulation and all sorts of different things. But because the vast majority of the houses that are being deconstructed in our community are older than 1950, was that based on, what was that based on the decision? Because I believe Victoria is 1970, so they actually did change that, and I think Vancouver's looking into changing it from 1950. I'm happy to see this moving forward, and I'm not gonna, I'm just wondering, I just wanted to understand sort of the thought process behind the 1950 date.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Curran. Really, it's a combination of a couple of factors. Obviously, the older homes have more easily recoverable materials. There is a certain limit to how far you can go. But the other part of it is just the market readiness in terms of the service providers. That was something that we heard in the consultation, some concern around would there be adequate service providers to actually do the deconstruction. So this is really a first step, and that we'll be closely monitoring with a view towards should it be successfully implemented, coming back to council with further information for council's consideration if we wanted to expand the vintages further.
Thank you. And just two other quick questions. Is the City of North Vancouver or the District of West Vancouver, to your knowledge, also moving in this direction?
Yes, I believe that the city actually this evening, I believe, has environment strategy being considered, and I believe there is a reference to pursuing deconstruction within that strategy. So it definitely is on their radar. I'm not aware of anything currently in West Vancouver at the moment. Oh, and I see Bo has turned her, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Bo.
Yeah, through your worship, to Councillor Curran, to our knowledge, I've spoken to their staff, and at this time they don't have plans to move forward with the deconstruction requirement.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think this is something that we'll have to keep improving upon, but I think it does help build capacity and change the system around how we build homes. and looking at all of the things that there's no place for them to go. I think that was why staff opted not to pursue the recycling, based on the reasons stated in the report, that a lot of materials, they're simply going to landfill, like there aren't facilities to recycle those. So there's a lot of work to do on that space, but I'm happy to see this moving forward, so thanks for that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hanson, your comments.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you very much, Ms. Jackson, for your presentation and your worship, and Councillor Curran for your comments with which I agree. I'm pleased to support this initiative. I believe it to be reasonable if a measured step in the right direction. I look forward to learning more about the success of this program, and I in particular look forward to learning about further initiatives that encourage recycling and a circular economy. But I am pleased to support this as an individual step. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a very brief comment to say I'm also very supportive of this. I think it's a way to really move, take one step in the right direction with regards to some of the climate action initiatives that we have, and all of which I'm very proud of. And I think this one is as I say, a good first step, and it will allow us to kind of measure our success and see if maybe we can go a little bit further with it in the future. But I just want to thank staff for all the work, and appreciate everything that's gotten us to this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Back. And Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Worship. The general idea of what this bylaw is trying to do, I'm in favor of, but I do have a couple of questions that I'd like clarification on. This is defining, if I'm reading this correctly, this is defining simply single family home demolition. Is that correct, staff? Please stop the clock.
Yes, that's correct.
It's just single family homes. Thank you. And so what if somebody does a renovation, like a small renovation themselves? An owner does a small renovation on a house. It's not a demolition. How do you define demolition where they would need a permit?
Thank you, Councillor Forbes, for the question, through your worship. I'm actually going to see maybe if Mr. Dwyer would like to take that question as it's getting into the mechanics of how we'll be enforcing the bylaw. So thank you for that.
Mr. Dwyer.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Forbes. A demolition permit is only required for complete demolition or deconstruction, as the case may be, of a single family home. So if someone's doing even a substantial renovation where the services remain intact, a portion of the dwelling remains intact, that's not a demolition. So this they would not require a green demolition permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Just and a comment that on page 65 at the top, the financial impacts is says that it will be basically on a cost recovery basis. So that fee would have to be adjusted, as you said, Mayor, I assume, going forward, depending on if we get more facilities and how many homes are actually being demolished. But along those lines, I have some concern that it also says there'll be increased staff support for permit review and issuance. It is anticipated as a result of the proposed regulations. So there's increased costs there that we may or may not cover, depending on timing, I guess. But I'm also concerned about increased costs to builders and how that affects when we're trying to get affordable housing. Builders will have to take these costs into their budgets, and they will, in all likelihood, pass them on to whoever is going to own that home. So I'm just making a comment here that this cost is going to be passed on. And we are in a climate of trying to encourage affordable housing, but I do realize this is now just single family housing. So having said those things, I'm in favor of this motion.
Thank you very much.
If I may, I just wonder if Mr. Dwyer wanted to just comment on those, just make a couple comments about the permit issuance process.
Sure, thank you. Your worship, through to Councillor Forbes regarding, we are trying to keep the administrative side of things quite simple, as we've created so that it's a simple kind of one-page multiplier submission. In terms of, we're trying to minimize the impact on the construction industry, and therefore minimize any on costs to the final consumer. So, for example, we'll look at our permit issuance process. Typically, we would issue a demolition permit and new construction concurrently. So we may look in the interim to issuing the green demolition permit ahead of the new construction permit, just to allow the additional time that deconstruction takes, so that there's no net loss of time for the contractor. So we are looking at ways to minimize any impact on affordability and cost to the process.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Can I just, Mayor, can I just raise one other point?
Okay.
Can this bylaw be specifically put single family homes in the title of the bylaw? Because the way it stands right now, it could be demolition of anything. So could we reference the bylaw using single family homes?
Just for clarity's sake, I mean, obviously in the body, but proposed demolition, single family demolition waste is the header. I think that's what you're after, just so that it signals that
Yes.
it's specifically narrowed to single family.
Yes.
Checking with the clerk. Can we amend the name of it just so that it makes sure that it's more clear?
May I say something, Your Worship?
Ms. Jackson?
Thank you. I just might recommend at this time potentially keeping the bylaw name a little bit more open, just given that we're sort of in the beginning stages of determining how this will work over time. And I think it would provide us with a little bit more flexibility to sort of reference the single family homes within the bylaw, but possibly not change the name of the bylaw. But obviously on our website and all of our communications with the builder community would make it very clear that that is the building stock that this bylaw is targeting. And that's very consistent with other approaches, whether it be here in the Metro Vancouver region with Vancouver or on the island of Victoria, for your consideration.
But there is at this point no intention to have this affect other properties other than single family homes. Is that correct?
Not for a very long time, no.
Okay.
What I'm afraid of, Your Worship, with respect to Ms. Jackson, what I'm afraid of is that the bylaw itself is kind of open-ended. And so what I'm afraid of is that somewhere down the road, maybe none of us will be on council, but somewhere down the road, people will assume this is a wide open kind of demolition thing that was agreed to. So at the moment, we're agreeing to single family homes. And so I think it should be stated that way. And we can always change it later down the road if that's, or add another bylaw if it's for something else. Thoughts?
I would just have one caution about that. I think that since that what's likely to happen is future demolition initiatives are likely to be captured under this as well. And you're likely to have in the zoning bylaw and in other places across other bylaws reference specifically to this one bylaw as a catch-all of demolition and waste initiatives. And so then if you change it in future, you'll have to go change all of the references to it or make the distinction in all of the other reference documents to recognize that there are two demolition bylaws at that point, one for single family, one potentially for multifamily or other institutional facilities. So I think that keeping it general is probably just simply from referencing. I get your point. The point is that this council is only at this point authorizing this to be focused on single family, but I think that this is going to be the catch-all for future initiatives. And if we narrow the scope within the title of the report, it's actually going to make it more complex for future councils. But I take your point. I'm just checking with the clerk. Is that even something that's within our capability at this stage of consideration of the bylaw to change the name of the bylaw?
It sounds like, Your Worship, that maybe it needs to be returned to staff to be considered and a more thoughtful response formulated rather than on the fly here.
Yeah. Councillor, so I think that if that's the other option, your option is to refer the matter back to staff for reconsideration on that aspect, or to let the matter go through as is right now. I happen to think that it's going to provide opportunity to capture other policies for multifamily and institutional properties. And I'd rather have them all in one spot rather than have them all have their own separate bylaws. And so I think having the general wording makes the most sense to me. Mr. Dwyer, do you have a further comment on the matter?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just pointing out that whilst the name of the bylaw may be general, the definitions do point to single family. The definition of residential building, which is defined in the bylaw, includes all buildings used for one and two family dwellings, as well as the accessory buildings on the same lot. So just thought adding that to the conversation for council's consideration.
Thank you very much. So as the mover, I'm not going to support changing the name. If a majority of council wants to refer the matter back to staff, that's their choice. But I think I'm going to be supportive of keeping it as is. Councillor, satisfy your?
Can I just? Well, yes, and I can see what you're saying as well, but I am concerned when something comes a little bit open and it may be another council that has to deal with this in the future and not think the same way that you or myself are thinking maybe. So can I just say in future when we do a bylaw that we try to be a little more specific about what it applies to when in the title? I don't want to hold this one up, but I would appreciate being a little bit more clear in the title of the bylaw. Thank you.
That's absolutely fair. And I think we have to be very diligent about that when we see a change in fees and charges. Sometimes that doesn't tell you what specifically fees and charges are going to be changed. And so we have to be careful in our public agendas to be articulate about what it is that's being considered, because the title of the bylaw under question may not actually signal what's being changed. So I completely support you on that. I think that I want the public in future to have to look to one document to find all of the classifications of demolition waste. And so I think this is going to be the one. Councillor Murray, your comments?
I bet you're all wondering what year the house that I'm living in was built in. Given that the entire interior of this home, oh, I don't know where I went, there I am. Given that the entire interior of this home, except for the ceilings, is made out of cedar with full cedar beams holding the roof up. And so, you know, I think I understand the need to, you know, do this carefully and methodically as we move forward. And we're looking at 1950s right now, but certainly we need to, you know, also consider, you know, the type of architecture that was happening at certain times. You know, the West Coast Moderns were used a lot of wood, obviously, on the siding and the interiors of these homes. And hopefully most of them will stay standing because they are significant pieces of architecture. But certainly the products that were used over the years, you know, I think they were much better years ago, whole wood, and you know, not some of the less valued wood that's used in construction now, or the siding that is used, etc. But I would like us to be able to catch you know, those homes in those decades that were timber heavy. And I know in my father's gas station down in Deep Cove, the beams were all full trees. They were full logs that they used to, and they are still standing today. So significant amounts of wood. And, you know, certainly those that are salvaging and reclaiming, you know, you will know that they go back to, you know, 100 years ago, old barns and things like that, where people are salvaging wood from because the wood was of such high quality and it was harder, et cetera. So, you know, as we encompass other decades of salvaging and to be able to, you know, contribute to the circular economy, I would just hope that we can move that forward more quickly to capture those homes that are left out of the 1950s. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No further speakers at this time, so I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Council. The next item up for discussion this evening is item 8.4. This is the Security Alarm Systems Bylaw 8588-2022. And do we have any comment from staff first before this discussion? I see Elio Iorio, you're going to be commenting on the matter.
Your Worship, district staff in conjunction with the City of North Vancouver and the North Vancouver RCMP detachment representatives have completed a peer review of the Municipal Security Alarm Systems bylaws. Through completion of this review, an updated bylaw has been created to help reduce the number of false alarm incidents requiring the RCMP on the North Shore to attend. The proposed bylaw incorporates regional best practices and utilizing a graduated fee structure. It clarifies verification responsibilities that the property owners and the alarm monitoring service companies need to attend to, and provides alignment of one consistent bylaw and fee structure across both North Shore municipalities. Along with corresponding amendments to the fees and charges bylaw is being brought forward to respective North Shore councils for first 3 readings with an intended coordinated commencement date of July 1st, 2022. Your Worship, that concludes the overview of this bylaw.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to be, I think that Dr. Cost has really raised an important issue about, you know, the heavy hammer of $150 fee. So I think what I'm going to be moving is basically the staff recommendation, but with one of the aspects that he raised being amended in, which is that a second offense is $50 and then a third offense is $150. Is there a seconder for that so we can have a discussion? Thank you, Councillor Hanson. So my comment on that, I think we actually have a community that really does respond in good faith to most scenarios. The recidivism rate after most of our bylaw infractions drops off to about 1/10 of the number of people after a first infraction. And I think people do intend, they're embarrassed by the situation that they had a call out, that they had a false alarm, that all the services had to come. I don't think people intend to have that happen. We do need mechanism in place so that people take it seriously. But I think stepping up the cost over multiple attempts is a reasonable way to address that. We obviously don't want to be making revenue. Ideally, I'd like to make $0 off this next year, right? This is something that we don't want to have false alarms, and we don't want to have our police resources diverted away from the necessary work that they do. But I think that this is a fair balance that includes showing the requisite seriousness to avoid repeat false alarms, but again, with a little bit of grace for somebody who's probably already been embarrassed by the situation. So I'll be supportive of that with the one change in. Councillor Hanson, your comments?
Thank you very much. I don't have too much to add to your words on the point and Dr. Koss' comments. It's a judgment call, of course, how we escalate these fines. I think some escalation and the program set forth as amended is reasonable, and I'm happy to support the amendment.
Thank you very much. Councillor Forbes, your comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy to support the amendment. I think especially when the first fine can happen in less than a 12-month period. So I'm happy to support the amendment that you made. This may just be the words, but I have a bit of a problem. I've had an alarm system for 40 plus years in my current house, and I have a bit of a concern here when we're talking about the owner's occupiers' responsibilities and then the verification prior to contacting the RCMP. And it falls over to the alarm monitoring services on page 99 as well. What I have a bit of an issue is they want the alarm company to try to contact the owner, and if they can't do that, they have to try and contact two other contacts before they contact the police. And I'm just saying, I think that's a few too many contacts, because the delay could be, I don't know, it could be somebody's life in danger. It could be a fire that gets a little longer to burn. I think that's a bit excessive that they have to try and make 3 contacts before they contact the police. So I'd be in favor of try to contact the owner, and if they can't reach the owner, then try to contact one of their substitute people and then contact the police. And if it was a false alarm, well, I'd rather have them get there quicker to save somebody's life or save their home, and the owner will be responsible for a fine then.
Very much. Councillor Miri, your comments?
I don't disagree with.
Your Honor? Is that just words? Is that just wordsmithing, or is that actually going to be right in regulation?
Forward an amendment. We'd probably need some clarification from the RCMP, so about their relationship with like RPEL or ADT or the different companies. I'm assuming that those companies are already required to have multiple contacts on file in order to be able to say that it is a verified call. But as somebody who has responded to a lot of calls in industrial properties and other things, odds are the person they're calling has no idea. The person they're calling is not necessarily a person who's in the building. Particularly as we have rentals and other things, quite often the person that if you do call the residents and the alarms are ringing at the time, or the alarms haven't been cleared, then it's a strange situation. But I would say in most cases, the prime person is going to be away from the house, and it was probably their pet that set off the alarm. In a lot of the cases of false alarms, but I think we have to return the item back to staff for clarification on that.
The other thing it's asking for is that all your contacts actually have the alarm code and access. People may not want to be giving out their house keys and alarm codes to 2 other people, maybe 1 other person. I know my alarm system, I'm able to, when my kids were younger, I could set up a separate code just for that night for the babysitter. But I mean, I think we're presuming here that people have long lists of people who are willing to drop everything and run over to the house. So, and I'm worried about time delays for people.
Okay, I'm going to look to you, Mr. Iorio. What do you think can be adjusted from this point forward, or what needs to be returned to staff for further discussion?
Your worship, I believe we could take this back to staff and collaborate with the city of North Vancouver and the RCMP to take some of those concerns into account, review it, and come back to council with a more informative report, taking those considerations into account.
So just to be clear about what Councillor Forbes is asking about is that it's the number of contacts that they have to exhaust before they can declare that they've gone through all of the contact list. It doesn't stop them from responding. It just makes it so that they prioritize the response higher if they get a verification, lower if they don't have the verification at that point. So I'm just being clear about what the net effect would be. We're telling them they have to have exhausted more callers before they can put it into that lower rank officially. It seems to me like it's setting up 3 tiers: verified, exhausted but not verified, and just straight up alarms ringing with no verification of any kind. So if you don't have any further comment on it, I think we should probably clarify that. Mr. Stewart, do you have clarity on what that's being asked there?
Yeah, your worship, my only concern about that, and I understand the gist of it, is that the intent here is to reduce the amount of time that staff are spending, or the RCMP are spending on these calls. The other concern I would have, if we develop a protocol that says you have to exhaust the contacts, if we actually have a real break and enter, and we're waiting to exhaust the contacts, it actually defeats both purposes. One is you delay the response, and the second is you're actually not saving any money. So that's the only concern I would have with that suggestion.
But with one concern, which is that if they don't have a list of contacts, they don't return to a higher priority call. If you have a contact list of 1 person or a contact list of 6 people, that doesn't affect the priority of the call. The priority of the call is still going to be verified first. These would be unverified, regardless of whether they've exhausted 1, 2, or 3 callers.
My understanding, your worship, is that if the owner can't be reached, then they go to the next person listed. And then if that person can't be reached, they go to the next. And then it stops there. They're only requiring that, they're requiring that the owner and 2 alternate people be contacted before the RCMP.
Yeah, I would be fine with it being more flexible, up to 3, but I think the difference in terms of callouts is when you have an industrial property, you're going to have a long alternate call sheet. When you have a single family house, exactly as you said, it doesn't make sense to have a very long callback contact sheet because it may, as you say, delay the call. But if it improves the chances that you'd have a verified alarm, and then you'd be able to prioritize resources appropriately. So I agree with
the false alarms and cutting the false alarms down. I just don't want to do it at the expense of somebody's, maybe they've got an intruder coming into their house and they're going to get stabbed. 5 minutes to try and reach the owner who maybe can't answer the phone. And then another 2 providers, that's going to take at least 5 minutes, and a response team could have been there in the 5 minutes. So I'm just saying, I think it's a bit redundant. I do understand the need to save the extra call outs, but I don't want to do it at the expense of somebody's life.
No, and I agree with you. I just don't think that that's the effect. I think what happens is then it's considered an unverified call, and it is still a lower priority response than a verified call. And having a longer list of contacts makes it more likely that you'd be able to establish that it's a verified call. But I see Mr. Wardell, I see Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stewart, do you have further comments on the matter?
Yeah, your worship, I mean, in practical purposes for most alarm calls, and some of them are industrial and commercial and others are residential. If the neighborhood calls in and says there's an alarm going off,
that's a verified call.
Yep. In more cases than not, it's the alarm company because they're set up. I mean, most folks don't have an alarm system that isn't connected with somebody that's going to call and react. Or if it's the homeowner and themselves that are calling, all three of those are sort of verifiable. So this is kicked around for about 20 years, I think, and I just don't want to make it any more complicated than it has to be. We can certainly monitor it for a year and see if we've got any issues, but I think as it stands right now, we seem to have something that both the city and the district have agreed to, and the RCMP. So in my opinion, it would be beneficial to move forward and then monitor it and report back if we've got some issues with respect to how efficient it is.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stewart. Mr. Wardell, you have some comments on the matter?
Through your worship, Mr. Stewart's pretty much explained what I was going to mention. In the absence of supporting what Mr. Stewart said, I think it should be returned to staff for further conversation with the RCMP and the city.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to move on in the speakers list unless you are moving to refer the matter back to staff, Councillor Forbes.
Your worship, I lost connection with you and I just came back on, so I didn't even hear what Mr. Stewart was saying.
Just basically that we have an agreement with the city of North Vancouver on this. It's been a long time in coming to get agreed language. I'm not as worried about this one being coordinated with other municipalities because it's all after the fact anyway.
Is there a rush on this? We're trying to put this in by July 1st?
The intention was that the bylaw would commence July 1st, 2022.
Can we not? I'd like to amend and send it back to staff. There doesn't seem to be a rush on this, and we could deal with it probably before we leave for summer break.
Okay, if that's your motion, are you referring the item back to staff?
Yes.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? I'll second that. Councillor Forbes on referral, or yes. Any other comments on referral? Okay, Councillor Murray, your comments on referral?
Well, I think Mr. Stewart has just explained when Councillor Forbes was off the call that we could monitor it for a year. The city, has this gone to the city council and they've agreed?
It is being, Your worship, it's being presented to city council tonight.
Oh. Okay, well, I guess we'll have to wait and see if they have some concerns. I guess in the case of a residential false alarm, and I was one of those people that would back up my neighbor's alarm when it went off. You know, there are some challenges to it, especially the older alarms. The newer alarms you can manage on your phone. So the ability to be able to verify with new alarm systems is a lot easier than the old ones where you had to wait for a phone call. But you know, a lot of the new alarms, the owner is, you know, connected on their phone. It was challenging for those older alarms if I wasn't home. And I had to go over manually and turn it off, get the key, go over and manually turn it off. And there were other residents in the neighborhood who were backup, but it is problematic. And one would hope that, if it wasn't a false alarm, then, obviously then they're not charged if it's not a false alarm. It's just if it continually goes off. So 1,300 false alarms between the district and the city. Do we know what the split is on that, or is it about 50-50 or?
It's about 800 through your worship, Councillor Murray. There's about 800 estimated yearly at the district.
In the district. And do we know what the like, do we know why there's so many false alarms? Are they faulty? Are they just, I mean, what's the reason that we have 800 alarms going off falsely?
Through your worship, Councillor Murray, for the most part, we're finding that a lot of these alarms malfunction, and the RCMP do need to reattend same residents or businesses multiple times where these alarms are actually repaired.
Yeah, and that did happen with my neighbor's alarm, where it was a faulty alarm and it went off on its own. And so I think that's the responsibility of the homeowner to be able to maintain those alarm systems in good standing. A lot of the alarm companies too, like ADT, it's, you know, you're getting callers or operators from Texas, you know, outside of Canada that are monitoring, and depending on how that number comes up on your phone. So I think I'm okay with allowing us to monitor, although given the issue at the City of North Vancouver, I'm wondering if they're having any concerns. So it may be in our best interest. I think sometimes when we're bringing two bylaws together into two municipalities, we should maybe stagger them. Instead of having them on the same night. That might be a little bit more helpful in the future. So we're not, you know, because it would be nice to know what they're saying right now. So I'm easy either way. I mean, if we want to refer it back to staff, I'll go with the majority of council.
I'm gonna call the question on referral. This may be much ado about nothing, so I'd rather go to the council for your decision on that. So an in favor vote is that the item be referred back to staff for further discussion. Opposed is we're going to try to continue on with it tonight. So on referral, all those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, so the matter is not going to be referred to staff. It's going to be dealt with here tonight. Back to the original motion, which I had made the one modification to at the front end. Is there any further discussion on that? And Councillor Forbes, your virtual hand is still up. I think it's from last time, but okay. Hearing none, I'm going to call the question on the motion that was moved and seconded. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries with Councillor Forbes opposed. Okay, thank you very much, Council. Thank you very much, staff. Next item up for discussion is, let me just make sure I'm on the right page here, is public electric vehicle charging stations grant application. And I look to staff for any opening remarks on this matter. I'm happy to move the recommendation and carry on.
I'll second it.
Ms. Jackson, do you have any comments on the matter?
No further comments, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll be moving the recommendation. It's seconded by Councillor Murray. I have no further comments on the matter. Councillor Murray, your comments?
Nothing.
Thank you very much. I see no further speakers from council, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, council. Next item for discussion is item 8.6. This is the OCP Action Plan Implementation Update. Again, just noting this, I mean, we obviously, whenever we talk about the official community plan, we could range all over because it covers topics throughout our entire community. This is for receipt for information on this one here with just a specific update. I'm going to go to Ms. Atva for comments from staff.
Thank you very much, Mayor Little. Good evening, members of council. It's nice to see others here today. Almost a year ago, July 2021, that the district concluded its 2-year targeted OCP review. Council directed that work to be done so that we could meet our vision and goals in 4 areas: transportation, housing, economy and employment lands, and the climate emergency. The major outcome of that work was the OCP Action Plan. Now, the process that led to council adopting the OCP Action Plan was quite broad-reaching and in-depth, as council directed. I remember, and I think you will as well, back to the white papers that were developed on each topic. There were COVID-19 supplement papers as well, given that the pandemic happened as we were partway through this process. There was a social equity lens paper as well. I remember the planners going out and doing sidewalk intercept surveys at the beginning of the process. We had a number of stakeholder workshops and different types of surveys. We had a workshop with social service providers that was really quite touching to see many people affiliated with agencies sharing their perspectives with us. The resulting OCP action plan has 8 priority actions, 21 supporting actions, and 2 implementing lenses. These are what we collectively felt would be the most impactful actions we could take to meet the challenges in those 4 areas. And the priority actions really speak to the kind of community we ourselves in the future. In 2030, they talk about achieving town and village centers, advocating for rapid transit, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The action plan is actually a really visual document. It's got color and graphics. It's in an easy to read format. Embedded in it are 16 quick win activities that we believe that could be done within the first 18 months or by early next year. So we're not quite there yet, but we're a good way through. Now, with the help of staff across the hall, this report summarizes where we are on those quick win actions and other activities. And I'll say that I find it really gratifying to report that most of those are underway. Many have been completed, and others, though, are in the early planning stages. A couple quick examples, if I may, Your Worship, that are in the report. An example of an activity that's completed is the North Shore e-bike pilot share program. Well, it's not completed. We've launched it, or you've launched it successfully in the spring of 2021. An example of an activity that's underway is the district-led rezoning on the Riverside Drive site in Maplewood Village, which was selected for further analysis by Metro Vancouver Housing. As we continue to move along through implementation, we'll continue to report on progress, and we're working on how to show this in a way that the community finds useful, maybe in a dashboard way, or which is really a graphic way that uses information at a glance. Part of this work is also measuring outcomes. So we've got about a dozen indicators in the official community plan, for example, around our percentage of growth that we attract to our major centers, our housing mix, our trips by walking, biking, or transit. These outcomes will help us measure if we're getting the success and desired impact that we want to see. Staff are available, Your Worship, to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will be moving receipt. Is there a seconder on the matter? Seconded by Councillor Curran. I did want to just press you for an answer to a very simple question. If you were to say in progress versus ongoing, which one's the earlier stage?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I recognize there's a bit of overlap in the work that is underway between in progress and ongoing. In progress, I think, has a bit more punch to it. Ongoing are some of those activities that were may have actually been underway or work already directed by council around the time or just before the action plan was adopted.
Well, I'm not going to get into the semantics of some of these priorities because I think some of them really are showing great progress, even though they're flagged as ongoing. Particularly, I want to mention the 10-year Mayor's vision on for transportation. This is reflected in priority action 2, 6, 8, as far as the need for us to improve transportation connections as a viable alternative to single occupant vehicles throughout their community. The 10-year plan not only has increase in the significant increase in the bus service hours and the handy dart service hours, which should also be recognized in here, but it also recognizes the importance of intermunicipal greenways where we can connect up cycling connections between our municipalities, and how Transit will be committing funds to support intermunicipal greenways and interregional greenways going forward. And so I would say that there's definitely some very material steps being taken in those fields, and we're hoping to have the Mayor's 10-year vision ratified this month, which the last 10-year vision had 85 to 90% of its projects funded and completed during the course of the 10-year plan. And so that will very materially advance many of these issues that are around transportation field in our community. So I did want to just give an extra a boost to those. I think they should all be in progress because we do have some material steps being taken on all of those areas. So, but I'll be supportive of receipt, and I believe the seconder on receipt was Councillor Curran.
Thank you, staff, for the update of where things stand. I also had the same question about what the in progress and can't remember what the in progress and something else ongoing. I guess I'm just wondering, there were challenges in the beginning getting a good baseline, and this may not be for this evening, but I love the idea, by the way, of having a way for the public and for council and anyone who wants to be able to easily go online and actually see how we're doing. I think sometimes these indicators are easier in terms of unit mixes and things like that, and sometimes they're more challenging. And specifically around the social equity work, I still have a lot of questions around what specific actions. There's one action listed in the plan, but then also what indicators are for that. I still think we have a lot of work to go on disability, making sure that that equity lens that we use is an organizational lens, not just for the specific tasks around the OCP. So I'm curious how we can sort of read that in more clearly the work we do and really understand what specific indicators we're using around social equity, and then around climate as well. I was just at a 3-day Climate Leadership Institute conference last week with a lot of folks, and Mayor Walton had previously sat on that council for years, and so there was a lot of people who had been in the business, shall we say, longer than I have, and sort of talking about why we haven't been able to move on emissions and other initiatives. And so I still don't have a clear sense of the baseline that we started at and how we're doing on our target of 45% reduction in what is now 8 years. So 8 years is not a lot of time for that transformation. And then I would say the same for mode shift. So hopefully some of those indicators will be more clear on an online platform. I've seen some other municipalities doing some cool stuff around there, which I think is good, just to keep us accountable to the commitments that we've set. So I don't know if staff has any comment on anything around the social equity, mode shift, or GHG baseline and how we're doing, because we need to be seeing that going down quickly to achieve our targets.
Thank you. Ms. Adda?
Thank you very much, Your Worship, to Councillor Curran. I'll say a little bit, and then I would welcome other staff who are here today, including Caroline Jackson. Recall that the OCP contains about a dozen indicators, and through the OCP targeted review, we didn't per se add new indicators. We did try to measure with best information available in the white papers. So granted, that information will be at least a year old at this time. On the social equity piece, we didn't add indicators there precisely either, which was really the, I guess, the agreed on approach, broadly speaking, for the targeted OCP review, wanting to use what we felt were good evaluation matrix measures in the OCP as they stood now. And I think for the social equity lens, some of the actions reporting on, some of the training, some of the calls to action work really reflect in some ways, I think, the early stages we are in some of this work. And I think we've got more to learn and more to report on as we go through. I'm going to stop there with Your Worship's permission, and if any other staff, Caroline Jackson or Gilmer might like to add something more, I would welcome that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jackson, your comments?
Yeah, through Your Worship, to Councillor Curran, it's certainly a really, really important aspect as we move this work forward, is to really determine those indicators and report out to the public on those indicators. And that is something that we are working on at a corporate level. I want to note specifically with regard to the community GHG inventory, it's unfortunately not a straightforward process to get the data, to compile the data and put it together, but we actively have a consultant who is currently working on that. And once that data is ready, we'll definitely be bringing it forward to council and to the public as well, so that we can definitely look at where we're at as we move towards our target. Because as you note, we do only have 8 years before 2030.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mr. Gilmore, the writer of the report, do you have a comment?
Thank you, Mayor Little, members of council. Not much to add to what Tina and Carolyn said. Just building off what Tina mentioned, that the indicators that we anticipate are the ones in the OCP. With that said, the social equity lens and the climate lens were two things that perhaps weren't contemplated at that time. So as we develop the dashboard to communicate these concepts to the public in clear ways, we can perhaps explore other ways to communicate on those particular lenses.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Ono, you had a comment?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to offer a comment regarding possibly the mode shift area. And so at least in the transportation field anyways, we do rely on a compilation of multiple indicators. Some of it is gleaned from the TransLink trip diaries, for example, in order to try to get a sense of mix of modes. Other indicators we're trying to build on ourselves is to get permanent count stations out there on our streets, so that we know, for example, how many bicyclists might be using some of the cycling facilities that we're starting to build now. Thanks to actually this council, we're actually making some progress now on being able to get some separated facilities, so that we can actually lay out counters at permanent locations, so that we can actually get some reliable counts. There are other things like vehicle kilometers driven that we're trying to get from multiple different sources, such as ICBC. So it's as Ms. Jackson mentioned, it's not absolutely straightforward, but we are going to keeping on to try and acquire as much data as we can in order to inform our decisions and see how effective things like the new built form and the more progressive, I'll say progressive planning strategies are for moving to a network of centers with grouped services and residences and whatnot. So thank you, Your Worship, for the opportunity.
Mr. Ono? Returning back, I believe, Councillor Curran, you were the one who prompted those questions?
Yeah, thanks for staff comments. I'll just say, in typical government fashion, the Climate Action Secretariat says, no, it's easy to get that data. And I say, no, it's not easy to get that. So it's interesting that there's still that disconnect between that it should be, oh no, it's so easy for us. And I know that staff has been working hard, and it's actually not that easy. And we had data that was actually not disaggregated from the city and the District of North Vancouver and ICBC, and it was all very challenging. But I think some of those indicators, that really makes a lot of sense. Thanks for clarifying that those actually are new additions, and that's why the indicators wouldn't have been listed. But I think there is some good work happening. I think the Metro Vancouver social equity strategy did some good work with some specific indicators that we might look to for reference as well. So thanks for the update.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it should also be noted, I don't think we can always wait for the baseline indicators to come along. Some of these things are decisions that have been proven in other markets, and so we also progress on them as well while we're doing that. Councillor Back, followed by Councillor Murray. Councillor Back, your comments.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just a brief comment. Thanks very much, staff, for this report. It's great to see our progress in all the different areas of the OCP review. I'm also looking forward to some sort of a dashboard tool that the public can interact with. I think that will be really helpful to have that kind of tool out there, just that will make it easy for people to kind of see where we are at in all the different areas. I wanted to just touch on the economy and the business services manager position that's being created to support our local businesses. Just wondering if staff can comment a little bit more from what's in the report on where that's at and how that will work.
And Ms. Atfa, can you comment on that, please?
Excuse me, Mayor Little, I think Mr. Milburn will comment on that. He just put his hand up.
Okay, Mr. Milburn.
Excellent, Your Worship. Thanks very much for that shout out. We're definitely trying to attract some excellent applicants for a position. Council may have noticed we have a posting currently for a manager of business and economic development. So this is going to be a really key position to help us advance the official community plan, action plan, supporting actions, as well as, of course, the key deliverables. Everything from tools and incentives for local employment, creating economic stewardship for staff, advocating for provincial reform on assessment review and tax reform, supporting local workers, and protecting industrial lands and trade enabling lands, and creating more flexible zoning and simplifying development approvals, and just being more business friendly overall. So that's a quick synopsis of some of the key areas in the action plan, and this position will play a pivotal role in assisting us to achieve council's objectives in these areas. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. Not much more to add other than to just say I'm really looking happy to see that's moving forward, and particularly as we come out of the pandemic and want to support the local economy, and great to see that that's moving ahead.
Thank you very much. Councillor Murray, your comments.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I think I'll just echo some sort of a tool that the community can use to find all information in one place in a simple way. You know, it continues to remain challenging to access our website and to find all of this information. You know, certainly in regards to housing and development, it's challenging. I often look at the City of North Vancouver's website to find development applications, and they have a very interactive map. And those interactive maps with those developments, you know, remain current. And on our website, we sort of have to toggle back and forth between different sites in order to see what's going on, major developments versus minor developments, and it can be challenging for ourselves, let alone the public. You know, but I guess you know, maybe one question we need to ask ourselves is, you know, who will be actually using this tool? Does the community really even know what an OCP is? Do they know what work has gone into it, what's changed, what's been amended, what's worked, what's not worked over the years? You know, we keep chatting about how we are, you know, creating these things for the public. But if you walk down the street and asked a dozen people if they know what OCP means, how many would actually say the official community plan? I don't think many. You know, they know what's in front of them when the traffic's bad, when there's more construction, when there's more development, you know, when there's not, you know, the services that are needed. You know, right now we're dealing with, you know, a doctor shortage. You know, we're dealing with, you know, one town center that has few services. You know, a town center like Lynn Valley, for instance, is very complete in many ways. It's got, you know, 2 grocery stores. It's got, you know, dry cleaners and banks and you know, stores and hairdressers and barbers, all sort of in one area. But we've got a couple of other town centers that are, you know, not as complete, and yet they were created to create a sustainable vision in order to allow people to get out of their cars to make that mode shift. And I'm not sure, you know, if that's actually what's occurring. When the OCP was adopted in 2011, you know, there was this plan, and the best laid plans of mice and men, as they say, do often go asunder. And the plan was that, you know, industrial properties and commercial properties that were being rezoned for residential development had a place to go. And now that is, you know, that has changed. And, you know, we need to be able to figure out how we're going to address that. You know, I think Councillor Little and I can hearken back to when we blanket zoned Marine Drive. You know, we thought something was going to change dramatically, and it didn't. And so, you know, plans need to be able to be malleable. First thing that Mr. Stewart said when I got elected was the OCP is a flexible document that moves, and it's malleable over time. It's not static. And yet, I always feel like we're trying to get to a target, and we have to really take into consideration, you know, how things are changing, and things are changing certainly in the last 10 years, very, very quickly. Who knew that we would still have the furnace on in nearly the middle of June with the weather, which changes the mode shift, you know, for people and how they're using their, you know, their bicycles, for instance. And when it's so cold that, you know, you can't, you know, even, I mean, doing any kind of activity as far as mode shift doesn't happen in the winter when, you know, there's so much ice and snow on the roads. You just basically stay at home. What COVID has done for us, you know, the silver lining in COVID and the challenges that remain. You know, I hope that this dashboard and this tool, as part of this discussion, shows where we were and shows where we are, and allows it to help us decide where we're going to go. Because so often I feel like we've got all these boxes that we have to check, and they may not be the right boxes. They may be boxes that are entirely different for all sorts of reasons, because, you know, life is flexible and malleable, and everything is changing, and it's changing a lot, and we have to be able to respond to it and make good decisions. You know, not just based on what a plan was and how it was laid out, because we want something to be a certain way. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way. And I think we have to go back and really, you know, reflect on the decisions that we've made and the changes that have occurred, and ask ourselves if those were the right ones, and if we need to do things differently as we move forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Murray. I don't see any other speakers on the matter at this time. I'm prepared to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Council. The last item up for discussion tonight is 8.7, Acting Mayor date change. It's a request from Councillor Curran to adjust the dates. I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Second question.
Seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Also, we have some time tonight for reports. If members of council would like to make reports. I see councillors back and Mary. I think those hands are up from before. Is that correct?
No.
Oh, okay. You both have reports. Councillor Back, you're up first then.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship. I just wanted to comment on my attendance at the annual Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference, the FCM, which was held in Regina from June 2nd to 5th. Like so many conferences and events, it was the first time that it had been held in person for a few years due to the pandemic. I'm always appreciative of the opportunity to attend these sort of conferences, as they do provide valuable opportunities to learn. And as I often find, many of the most valuable learning opportunities are actually in the more informal conversations that you get to have with other delegates from across the country, outside of some of the more formal sessions. The theme this year was Together for Recovery, and some of the big themes were addressing the toxic drug overdose crisis, providing affordable housing, and adapting to climate change. And when it comes to affordable housing, it was clear that municipalities across Canada are coming to the table to help support new construction of affordable housing. We also had the annual address by the Prime Minister, who highlighted some of the key federal funding opportunities, but really stressed the need to work collaboratively with the provinces to access the funding. I attended a number of different workshops. One of the more memorable ones stood out for me was one on how to build an anti-racist, equitable, and inclusive municipality. It was an excellent panel that was part of that workshop. I included the new mayor of Edmonton, Amarjeet Sohi, who highlighted the need to look at racism in an intersectional way. He gave the example of building housing, certain types of housing in the right locations can be part of anti-racism work. So overall, I would just say it was a great conference. I came away from it feeling quite optimistic about our role as a local government and proud of the work that we're already doing here in the District of North Vancouver as well. So thanks very much for the ability to attend.
Thank you very much. Councillor Muir, your report.
A couple of reports, and the first one was that there was many of us, I think, well, Councillor Back was away at the FCM, but Councillor Hanson, yourself, obviously Mayor Little, and Councillor Forbes and I attended the opening of our new Lionsgate Community Rec Centre. Councillor Forbes and I were there on behalf of the Rec Commission and Council, and it was a nice day. It didn't rain, it was windy. We had greetings from the Tsleil-Waututh and Squamish Nation, and Heather Turner, our director of our Rec Commission, obviously was there with our chairs of the library board and our Capilano Community Services. We have a new Red Cross portal at the center, which is downstairs in the underground parking lot. There's a beautiful gym. There's a quick express brand new library. There's a large courtyard that's connected to hopefully some commercial of some sort in the future. And there was a lot of staff there. It was a really nice event, and I think people are happy that it's opened. I did want to also just share with you something that came up at our Parks, Metro Vancouver Parks meeting last week. And we're doing some restoration work at Capilano Regional Park, small areas, but significant. There's been some impact there. So they're doing some environmental restoration in 3 areas in the park. So there might be some impact to users, but very minimally. But there was also something I think Council will be very interested in, and there's a discussion beginning with Belcarra and Port Moody and our staff at the District of North Vancouver with Metro in regards, and our partners certainly with TransLink and other opportunities, but to look at a ferry connection between Belcarra, Port Moody, a pedestrian ferry between Belcarra, Port Moody, and Deep Cove. And so the discussions are in their infancy, we're just looking at what opportunities may exist to be able to connect these 3 municipalities through the water, which, we at one time back in the 40s, they were connected, or at least Vancouver to Deep Cove, there was a connection because there was a ferry that did exist. So those kinds of new mode shares of people, coming to different areas in different ways, certainly using the waterway is something that's intriguing, and I will keep Council apprised of those discussions going forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your report. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was going to mention that I was at the opening of the Lionsgate Rec Centre, but Councillor Murray has done that, and I was there to represent Council and as a commissioner of the North Vancouver Rec Centre, Recreation Services and Cultural. I would like to say too that I was there at 3 o'clock. I was the only one of the sort of representatives that was still there at 3 o'clock because I was having so much fun looking around at everything. And what I found out about the Express Library that I think is really beneficial is it's a very, very small selection of books there, but you can go into the Express Library there and look at the full catalog of the library services, and you can order a book to be brought down to the Lionsgate Library, and it'll be there within 2 days. And they use the library card to swipe lockers that when your book that you ordered comes in, they'll put it in this locker, and the locker is outside of where the library Express Library is, so you don't need an attendant at the desk. It's 24/7. You just use your library card, scan the locker, it'll open up and you can take your book. So I thought that was pretty pretty smart. I mean, and it doesn't depend on somebody being at the desk. So, yeah, I just looked around all over, and I'm now reminded I didn't post pictures that I took up on social media. So I'll probably post some pictures after tonight. The other thing that I went to was a Chamber of Commerce.
Councillor Forbes, I did just want to correct one thing. The book thing is not 24 hours. It's the rec center's hours. So not the library's hours, but it's in the hallway for the rec center. So the rec center does have to be open for you to be able to get your books out. But the library, Express Library, is only open about 20 hours a week, whereas the actual rec facility space is about 70 hours a week. And so, but it's based on the rec center's hours, not the library's hours.
Thank you for clarifying that, because the two people who were working in the Express Library made a point of emphasizing to me it was 24/7. So thank you for clarification on that. It makes a little more sense. In any case, the second thing that I did attend was a Chamber of Commerce sponsored talk from the TransLink CEO, and it had to do with transportation, of course, and 2050. And there were questions about where the North Shore was going to fit in with their timing and their planning in the next 10 years. And of course, we're talking about the rapid transit and the HRT. I forget all the acronyms. Yeah, yes.
BRT.
BRT, yes. And I did bring up the question. I don't know, the talk was a little bit, I thought it was a little bit sort of trying to say 3 to 5 years, but my impression was it's more like 5 to 10 years. So I didn't find out a whole lot new. When questions and answer time came up, I did ask about, even if we get all these parts from Burnaby all the way to Park Royal, and all of from Lynn Valley to Lonsdale and Lynn Valley to the Ironworkers Bridge, even if we get all of that done and okayed and passed and everybody's done their thing, what about the bridge? And I said bridges, but bridge. And I asked if they were in talks currently with the provincial government about anything to do with the bridge, because the bridge only has about an estimated 10-year life left on it. And the answer I got back was no, but they will be. So that makes me think even more that it's not going to be 3 to 5, it's going to be 5 to 10. So that was the second thing that I did attend. So that's all for my report.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, I have Councillor Hanson.
Thank you very much. I also attended the opening of the Lionsgate Rec Center, and I'd also like to thank and congratulate everyone involved in that milestone. My report, however, pertains to my activities on the North Shore Standing Committee on Substance Use, a body that I chair, and its June 1st meeting. I am pleased to report that at that meeting, we first had an update from Coastal Health as to toxic drug deaths, which continue at a rate of 5.5 a day. So it's the 13th today. So if any of you can multiply 5.5 times 13, that's the number of people who have perished of toxic drugs in British Columbia since we held our meeting. I'm that number, by the way, is an improvement over 6 a day, which was the number which was prevailing in a couple of months prior. At that meeting, I successfully achieved a vote calling for a motion for regulation of illicit drugs to create a safe supply. It was essentially the Mum Stop the Harms motion that was unanimously supported by this body, that is to say North Vancouver District Council, in 2021. The North Shore Standing Committee on Substance Use will therefore be writing a letter to the federal government representing that committee and its constituents elements, calling for regulation and a safe supply of toxic drugs in order to save these 5.5 souls, which are dying per day in British Columbia. So we were, those of us who had been active in that initiative, and it has been a project that we've been working on for a couple of years, we're very pleased that at least we were able to secure that vote of that body. Thank you.
Very much. Next report I have is Councillor Curran.
Oh, yes, my microphone was on the whole time. So I was not able to attend the Lionsgate event, although I did go and check out the new facility prior to the grand opening because I was attending the BC Library Trustees Association day-long event with the director. Jacqueline was there, and it was such a lovely day. I was at the SFU. There's many SFUs, as it turns out, so I got off the bus and I was like, it's one of these buildings. So but it was a really, really lovely day, and it was great to connect with other folks from around the area that serve as trustees and share ideas and inspiration and hear from other folks. So that was the first time I attended that, and I really enjoyed it. Last week, I was out at UBC for 3 days staying in the dorm, $60 a night, highly recommend. Also bring a pillow, maybe, or steal one from your friend who's staying in a hotel room. Thin, not the best pillows. But for $60 a night, couldn't really beat it. And so that was 3 days at the BCMCLC, which is the British Columbia Municipal Climate Leadership Council. I'm on the steering committee for that. And then it's the Climate Leadership Institute, which is the third time I think I've attended that. Second time in person. The first year it was in person, and then not in person, and now in person again. So the Climate Action Secretariat is there the whole time, talking about how local governments are going to help them achieve Clean BC, sharing ideas, tears, swear words, all sorts of great things. And then I also attended I'm part of the North Shore School Food Network via some work that I do, and the Farm to School and Table Matters and other partners came together at Norgate Elementary School last week. It's all a blur, it might have been the week before. And it was so wonderful to learn about some of the initiatives they're doing around some Indigenous gardens that they're doing in collaboration with Squamish Nation. I got to meet the superintendent was there, and we got really excited about just all the opportunities for collaboration around gardening, specifically at all the schools, and how we could best partner on those. So it was the sort of celebration of this partnership, and it was really lovely to attend that. And I think those are the highlights.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. For my own report, I'll add to the comments about the opening of the Lionsgate Community Recreation Center. It was great to officially open this space, which has been a long time in coming. By a long time, I mean the original proposal for a lower cap in Marine Drive Community Center was a referendum in 1996. Where the municipality committed to building it. It took a long time to get a unified vision for what that would look like and how it would be incorporated in the local area plan and in the subsequent Marine Drive plan as well. And so it's really been a commitment of decades of councillors to council members to this commitment for barrier-free access to high-quality public resources within a close distance to people throughout our community, and making sure that people can live, work, and play theoretically within each of our key areas. And so it was a recognition that the western part of the municipality was underserved as far as public resources were concerned, and that this is a significant step forward in improving that access to that southwestern corner of the municipality. It's a great facility, and it's already being well used by its neighbors. And when the library portion is closed for the day, they can open up the entire southern wall. It all retracts back, and it turns into the community neighborhood for the evening, where people can come in and sit down and watch a movie and chat with friends and really use the space as very welcoming, again, low barrier space in our community. So it's a critical milestone for supporting that neighborhood and its development, and very happy to have supported that. Also had a meeting, a good long meeting with the full group from SHAC, talking about housing initiatives in our community. And one final report to note, I went and attended our open house on housing diversity in single family neighborhoods. This was using the community room space at the Lynn Valley Library, and it was well attended. People were coming in curious to see all our boards set up, and lots of the people that were coming in didn't intend to. They were wandering in the general area and saw our boards, and it just goes to show you that you gotta do this public input out in the community, because you're going to pick up people who don't have a major axe to grind. They're just the normal folk that go about their business in our community, and they come in, spend a few minutes, get educated about it, and tell you their opinions on things. And but they're not the sort that you would necessarily find if you put a web resource out there to fill out a survey and other things. But we happen to capture them because they were out and about on their day and saw an opportunity. So really thankful to the staff for making people feel welcome in that space. And I hope that we can get back to having robust community consultation in public spaces like that again. I just think it's such an important part of our being a community of communities and making sure that people have opportunities to come out and share their opinions on things. So I was very excited about that. I thought I'd make that a special report. Councillor Murray, your comments?
I just wanted to add one thing to your comment about Lionsgate and how long it took. And part of the challenge with it taking so long was that all of the sites that we had ever looked at in the area were very geographically challenging. At one point, we were looking at the baseball diamond on the other side of Marine Drive at Norgate, and building a building sort of on a right angle along, first and second base, or, third base and second base. And they were all very, very challenging. So I think it's important to put that in context, because it wasn't without trying to find a place. And so through redevelopment in Lower Capilano, we were able to secure that site for the building. But, all of the other areas were so already taken up with, fire halls and parks and homes and shopping and industry. And it was a challenging area to find land.
Definitely, a fair point. And again, a feature of when the communities developed, we'll say, Seymour was one of the later places to develop, not till the 1960s and 70s in earnest. By then, the municipality was holding back land for those kinds of spaces. But when the area around Norgate developed in the 40s and 50s, the lands that they kept were more linear spaces. They do have a fantastic trail network right through the center of Norgate, but they didn't reserve spaces for a rec center at that time. But you're absolutely right. Definitely people have been working towards that for a very long period of time, and I'm very happy to open it. Council, any further reports to be made today? Okay, hearing none, I'll accept adjournment. We've completed the business of this evening's meeting. So Councillor Back has moved it. I will accept. Again, thank you all for your participation tonight. Thank you to the staff that prepared the reports, and thank you to the members of the public for staying through the meeting and participating and sharing their opinions. Have a fantastic week. Thank you.